The hum of the central air was the only sound in my home office, a low, steady thrum that usually faded into the background of my thoughts. But in that moment, it was deafening. It was the sound of a world holding its breath. The phone felt impossibly heavy in my hand, its smooth glass suddenly slick against my palm. On the screen, the timer for the conference call ticked past the 2-minute mark. 2 minutes since I had merged the calls. 2 minutes since my husband, Andre, thought he had put his mother, Loretta, on hold. 2 minutes since he had whispered the words that unraveled a decade. "She has no clue," he'd said, his voice a conspiratorial murmur, the kind of intimate stage whisper meant only for one person's ears. "I handle what she can't." The line had gone silent for a fraction of a second after that, the dead air where his mother's soft agreement should have been. And in that silence, I felt the architecture of my life dissolve. Not in a fiery explosion, but in a quiet, structural failure. The load-bearing walls turned to dust, the foundation to sand. The client on the other line, a developer named Mr. Henderson, cleared his throat, unaware that he was a witness to a demolition. "Danielle, Andre, are we ready to proceed with the offer?" he asked, his voice crisp and professional. I pressed the mute button, a small, futile gesture of control. "My name is Danielle. I am 33 years old. For 11 of those years, Andre was my husband. I am a real estate agent, and I've learned that the most important part of any structure isn't what you see. It's not the fresh paint or the curated furniture in the living room. It's the foundation, the framing, the unglamorous, unseen work that holds everything up. For our entire marriage, I believed we were building a home together. It was only in that moment, listening to a conversation I was never meant to hear, that I understood my role. I wasn't the co-architect. I was the foundation he stood on to look taller. The words themselves were a simple poison. She has no clue. I handle what she can't. It was the casual, confident delivery that did the real damage. The complete absence of doubt. He wasn't trying to convince his mother. He was confirming a shared and settled fact. A corporate truth of their private two-person company, of which I was apparently a subsidiary, a line item he managed. She has no clue. The she was me. The clue was, I suppose, the intricate, high-stakes world of Houston real estate that he navigated with such apparent ease, a world I had in fact built for him, board by board, nail by nail. I handle what she can't. The lie was so audacious, so complete, it was almost elegant. It wasn't a simple denial of my contribution. It was a total erasure of my existence as a competent professional. He painted a picture of me as a well-meaning but slightly overwhelmed partner, someone who handled the softer things, the staging, the pleasantries, while he, the man, wrestled with the complex negotiations and the serious money. It was a narrative designed to make him the hero and me the protected, blissfully ignorant wife. It was the story he told his mother. It was, I realized with a sudden, chilling clarity, the story he likely told himself. The cruelty wasn't in the lie. It was in the fact that he believed it. To understand the weight of that whisper, you have to understand the archaeology of our partnership. Our careers in real estate had started together, two ambitious agents at the same large brokerage, hungry and full of plans. In the beginning, we were a team. I was the detail-oriented one, the one who saw the potential in a tired bungalow, who knew how to write listing descriptions that made a house feel like a home before you ever stepped inside. Andre was the face, the charismatic closer with a smile that could disarm the most difficult seller. We were a perfect pairing, and our success was immediate and intoxicating. We were the brokerage's golden couple. After 3 years, we married, and soon after, he came to me with a proposition. "Let's form the Williams Group," he'd said, spreading his hands wide over our kitchen table, a gesture of grand vision. "You and me, but under my name, officially. It just looks better, more stable, a man leading the team." I remember hesitating, a flicker of something I couldn't name. "But we're partners, Andre. 50-50. "Of course, baby, always," he'd soothed, taking my hand. "This is just branding. It's strategy. Behind the scenes, nothing changes. You're the engine, I'm the steering wheel." I was young and in love, and I mistook his ambition for our ambition. I agreed. And so, the Williams Group was born, with Andre Williams as the principal agent and me, Danielle Williams, as his partner, my name appearing in a smaller font beneath his on the business cards. It seemed like a small concession at the time, a matter of aesthetics. But branding is never just branding. It's a story. And over the next 7 years, the story he sold became the reality he inhabited. The erosion was gradual, a slow silting up of my professional identity. It began with the closings. I was the one who managed the transaction coordinators, who chased down the title companies, who reviewed every line of the closing documents to ensure there were no errors. I managed the infrastructure of the deal. Andre would show up for the final signing, shake the hands, collect the accolades, and pose for the picture with the happy clients holding a giant key. In the first few years, he'd always say, "We." We couldn't have done it without my wife's eye for detail. "We make a great team." Then slowly, the "we" became a more possessive "I." I caught that error in the survey just in time. I knew this neighborhood was the perfect fit for them. The "we" was relegated to private conversations, a currency used only between us, while the "I" was for public consumption. His mother, Loretta, was the silent partner in this rebranding effort. She was a woman of quiet, formidable opinions, delivered as gentle suggestions. She adored her son and tolerated me with a kind of polite bewilderment, as if she couldn't quite understand why Andre, her brilliant boy, needed a co-pilot. She would visit our home, a beautiful craftsman we'd restored in the Heights, and her compliments were always subtly directed. "Andre, you have such a wonderful eye for classic design," she'd say, standing in a living room I had designed, staged, and furnished down to the last antique book on the coffee table. Andre would just smile, a little puffing of his chest. He never corrected her. He never said, "Actually, Mom, Danny did all of this." He just accepted the credit as if it were his due. It was the echo pattern, a feedback loop of validation between mother and son. She would offer a version of reality that centered him, and he would absorb it, then reflect it back into our marriage. "Loretta thinks I should be the only one speaking at the investor seminars," he'd mentioned casually one evening. "She says it dilutes the brand if we're both up there. It needs a single, authoritative voice." "And you agree with that?" I'd asked, my voice carefully neutral. "It makes sense, from a marketing perspective," he'd replied, not looking up from his laptop. "You're better with the one-on-one anyway. You connect with people. I'm better with the big picture." I let it go. It was easier than arguing. Easier than pointing out that I had created the presentation he would be delivering, that I had researched the market data he would be citing as his own expert analysis. I had built the big picture he was now claiming to command. My complicity was 1,000 small surrenders. I convinced myself I was being a supportive wife, that I was choosing peace over ego. I didn't realize I was funding my own erasure, one concession at a time. The catalog of my invisible labor was vast. I was his uncredited stager, transforming his stale, bachelor pad listings into warm, inviting homes that sold in days, not months. I would spend weekends painting accent walls, arranging furniture I sourced from consignment shops, and hanging art. He'd walk in for the final reveal and say, "Looks great, babe. See, I knew this place had potential." I managed his client database, a complex system I designed to track every birthday, every anniversary, every child's graduation. Andre was famous for his personal touch, for remembering the little things. He never forgot, because I never forgot to remind him. I wrote the emails. I bought the closing gifts. I sent the holiday cards. I was the entire scaffolding of the charm he sold as his own natural gift. I remember one deal in particular, a historic property in Montrose that had been languishing on the market for 6 months before we took it on. The owners were difficult, the house was dated, and every agent who'd touched it had walked away. Andre was ready to give up after the first month. "It's a dog, Danny. We should cut our losses," he'd sighed, tossing the file on the counter. I saw something he didn't. I saw the good bones, the hidden character. I spent the next 3 weeks personally overseeing a cosmetic renovation, using our own money to finance it. I picked the paint colors, sourced period-appropriate light fixtures, and staged it with a mix of modern and vintage furniture that made the history feel alive, not old. The day of the new open house, a storm rolled through Houston. The rain was torrential. Andre called me, his voice tight with frustration. "No one's going to show. This is a bust." "Just wait," I told him. I had spent the morning baking bread, so the house smelled of yeast and warmth. I had curated a playlist of soft jazz. I created a sanctuary from the storm. And people came. They came in droves. We had 3 offers by the end of the day, all well over asking price. The commission was one of the largest we'd ever earned. That night, we celebrated at Uchi, ordering the most expensive omakase-tasting menu. Andre raised his glass of sake. "To me," he said, with a broad, theatrical smile, "for not listening to myself and sticking with that dog of a house." He was joking, but he wasn't. In his narrative, the victory was his persistence, not my vision. I remember smiling back, a tight, practiced smile, while something inside me went cold. That was a memory I had carefully filed away as a happy one, a celebration of a hard-won victory. Listening to his whisper on the phone, I pulled it out and looked at it under a new, harsher light. The memory was contaminated. The entire celebration had been a performance, and I was the only one who didn't have the script. He wasn't celebrating with his partner. He was taking a victory lap in front of his staff. That was the true archaeology of disrespect. It wasn't about one single act of betrayal. It was about the slow, systemic dismantling of my value, a process so gradual and insidious that I had participated in it myself. I had handed him the tools. I had held the ladder. I had applauded his ascent, never realizing he was sawing off the rungs below him as he climbed. He performed loyalty to my face, spoke of us and our empire. But in the quiet, private moments, with the one person whose opinion he truly valued, he undermined me completely. He didn't just take credit for my work. He created a world where my work didn't exist at all. A world where I, his capable, intelligent, and successful wife, had no clue. A world where he had to handle things, because I simply couldn't. The click of the mute button releasing felt like a gunshot in the silent room. "Mr. Henderson, apologies for that," I said, my voice impossibly calm, a stranger's voice borrowing my vocal cords. "Andre had a momentary connection issue. We're both here now and ready to proceed. Andre, you have the final numbers from their counteroffer, correct?" There was a beat of silence on his end. I could picture him perfectly, sitting in his car in the parking lot of the title company, his phone pressed to his ear. He would be straightening his tie, composing his principal agent face, completely unaware that his entire world had just tilted on its axis. "Yes, of course," he said, his voice returning to its smooth, professional tenor. "Right here." For the next 20 minutes, I listened as he negotiated the final points of the Henderson deal. I listened to him use the phrases I had scripted for him, the negotiating tactics I had researched. He was confident, charming, and utterly convincing. He was playing the part I had written for him, and he was playing it brilliantly. And as I listened, something new settled into the space the shock had carved out. It wasn't anger. It wasn't even heartbreak. It was a profound and unnerving stillness, a clarity so absolute it felt like the air had been sucked out of the room. In my profession, you learn to look at a property and see past the surface. You learn to spot the hairline crack in the ceiling that signals a foundation issue, the faint watermark that betrays a hidden leak. You learn that the prettiest houses can hide the most dangerous flaws. For 11 years, I had been living in the prettiest house, admiring the paint and the fixtures, and ignoring the creak in the floorboards, the draft from the window, the undeniable feeling that the whole structure was slowly, irrevocably sinking. His whisper wasn't the cause of the collapse. It was just the moment I finally allowed myself to see the condemnation notice that had been nailed to the front door for years. The sensation was crystalline. It was the quiet, satisfying click of a lock finding its key. The decision wasn't made in that moment. It was revealed. It had been there all along, waiting for me to be quiet enough to hear it. When the call ended, Andre was jubilant. "We got it, Danny!" Full ask, and they're waiving the inspection contingency. Can you believe it? Henderson loved my approach. "That's wonderful, Andre," I said, my voice even. "A great win for the team." The word team tasted like ash in my mouth. "The biggest commission of the year," he continued, oblivious. "Loretta is going to be so proud. I'm heading to the closing now. I'll see you at home tonight, and we'll celebrate. Wear that blue dress." "Okay," I said. "Drive safe." I hung up the phone and sat in the silence of my office for a full minute. I looked at the wall where our awards were hung, plaques from the Houston Association of Realtors, top producer certificates. Most of them had his name in large font, with the Williams Group underneath. My name was nowhere to be seen. I had always told myself it didn't matter, that I knew the truth. But the truth you keep to yourself is just a secret. It's not a fact. The fact was what was on the wall. The fact was what he whispered to his mother. My preparation began not with a frantic packing of bags, but with a quiet and methodical series of clicks on my computer. I was still his partner, his administrator, the engine of the business. I had all the passwords. I had all the access. He trusted me with the back end of the business because he fundamentally believed I wasn't capable of understanding its power. It was the kind of arrogance that creates its own vulnerabilities. First, I logged into our client relationship management software, the system I had built from the ground up. Over the next hour, I meticulously exported every client file I had personally managed, every contact I had nurtured, every relationship that had been built on my expertise and my time. The data flowed onto a secure external hard drive, a quiet digital exodus. Next, I logged into the brokerage portal. The Henderson deal was set to close in an hour. The commission check, a substantial 6-figure sum, would be wired to our joint business account by the end of the day. As per our agreement, the money was always split 50-50. I opened a new browser tab and logged into our online banking. I initiated a transfer, moving exactly half of the current balance into my personal savings account, an account Andre didn't even know I had. I titled the transfer, Final Commission Split. The last step was the most delicate. I had a list of 3 upcoming listings, clients who had come to us but had connected specifically with me. I had done the comps, prepared the marketing plans, and built the rapport. They were my listings in every way but name. I initiated the official transfer paperwork within the brokerage system, moving the listings from the Williams Group to a new designation, Danielle Williams, Independent Agent. The system would require our broker's approval, but the request itself was a declaration. It was clean. It was professional. It was irreversible. All of this was done in the time it took him to drive across town, shake a few hands, and sign his name on a stack of documents I had already vetted. He was closing one deal, celebrating a victory he thought was his. He had no idea I was in the process of closing our entire life. The irony was so thick, so suffocating, I almost felt a detached sense of pity for him. He was walking into an ambush he had set for himself. When I was done, I shut down my laptop and walked through our house for the last time. It was beautiful, a testament to my eye for design and my love of creating a sanctuary. But it wasn't a home. It was a stage, a meticulously designed set for the play of our marriage, and I was tired of playing my part. I didn't pack everything. I didn't tear through closets in a fury. My departure was as quiet and methodical as my preparation. I took my clothes, my books, and the small box of personal mementos I kept on my bedside table. I left the furniture, the art, the life we had curated together. They were props, and they belonged to the set. As I was about to leave, my eyes landed on a box from the printer on the credenza in the hallway. It was a fresh shipment of 500 business cards for the Williams Group. Andre had redesigned them last week. Our names were stacked now, Andre Williams, and directly beneath it in a slightly smaller, softer font, Danielle Williams. An illusion of partnership. I opened the box. The cards were thick and glossy, the ink still smelling faintly of the press. I took a fine-tipped black marker from the desk drawer, and with a steady hand, I began to work. On the first card, I drew a single, neat, black line through my own name. Then I did it again, and again. I went through the entire box, card by card, striking my name from the record. It was a quiet, painstaking act of redaction. I was editing myself out of the story. It took nearly an hour. When I was finished, I placed one of the altered cards on the center of his pillow, the black line a stark, definitive slash. The rest I left in the box. Let him discover the scale of the erasure himself. That was my symbol. Not a tear-stained letter, not an angry voicemail, just a quiet, professional edit. My name, removed. I locked the door behind me and didn't look back. The air outside, thick with Houston humidity, felt clean for the first time in a long time. The feeling wasn't triumph, and it wasn't grief. Not yet. It was the airless, composed calm of a decision that has finally, irrevocably, been made. It was the feeling of a building being evacuated before a controlled demolition. The silence before the fall. The first text arrived an hour later as I was checking into a hotel in the Galleria area. Just got home. Where are you? I set the phone down on the bed and ignored it. The second came 5 minutes later. What's with the business card on my pillow? Is this a joke? I began to unpack my small suitcase, folding my shirts and placing them neatly in the hotel drawer. The phone buzzed again. A call this time. Andre. I let it go to voicemail. He called back immediately. I silenced the ringer. The texts started coming in a flood then, a rapid-fire cascade of confusion turning to irritation. "Danny, pick up the phone. This isn't funny. Did you see the commission hit? We should be celebrating." "Okay, I'm starting to get pissed off. What the hell is going on?" This was the first stage, shock and denial. He couldn't process the data. It didn't compute with his understanding of the world, a world in which I was a permanent, predictable fixture. His wife, his partner, the one who handled the things he couldn't be bothered with, like logistics and feelings and the endless grinding details. The anger and accusation phase began around 9 p.m. He must have discovered the transferred listings and the cleared bank account by then. The tone of his texts shifted from demanding to vitriolic. "You emptied the account? Are you crazy? You're trying to steal my clients after everything I've done for you? Unbelievable. You are being so dramatic and manipulative. You blow one little thing out of proportion and try to ruin my entire business." I read the words on the screen, and I felt nothing. It was like reading a market report about a property I no longer had any interest in. The accusations were so predictable, so perfectly aligned with the character he had become. He didn't see my actions as a consequence of his. He saw them as a sudden, inexplicable attack. The next morning, the third stage began, recruiting allies. The call came from a number I knew by heart. "Loretta." I answered on the second ring. "Danielle, dear," she began, her voice dripping with a practiced, syrupy concern. "Andre is worried sick about you. He says you've had some sort of episode." "I'm fine, Loretta," I said calmly. "Well, you're clearly not fine, dear. Running off like this, taking money. It's not like you. Andre told me he said something that upset you. You know how men can be. They don't always think before they speak. You can't just throw away a marriage over a few careless words." She was doing what she always did, smoothing, managing, reframing. She was recasting his profound disrespect as a simple gaffe, and my calculated departure as female hysteria. She was protecting her son, which I understood, but in doing so, she was asking me to invalidate my own reality. "I appreciate your concern, Loretta," I said, my voice unwavering, "but I'm handling it." I used his word, handle, the one he had used to diminish me. I was taking it back. There was a moment of shocked silence on her end. I had never spoken to her with such finality. "Well," she said, her tone hardening, "I think you're making a terrible mistake." She hung up. The fourth stage, negotiation and false remorse, arrived that afternoon via a long, rambling email from Andre. It was a masterpiece of non-apology. He was sorry for how I felt. He regretted that his words were misinterpreted. He then pivoted to a series of frantic offers. He would give me a higher commission split, 60%. He would make me a named partner, Williams & Williams. He would buy me the new car I'd been wanting. The offers were transactional, desperate attempts to patch a structural flaw with cosmetic fixes. He was trying to buy back the infrastructure he had just realized he couldn't live without. I replied with a single sentence. "Why are you offering me now what I earned 10 years ago?" That finally seemed to break through the wall of his denial. It led to the final, most revealing stage. Raw vulnerability. He called, and this time I answered. He wasn't yelling anymore. His voice was cracked, small. "Danny, please," he whispered. "Don't do this." I didn't say anything. I just listened to the sound of his breathing. I know what you heard," he stammered. "On the call. I know." "Yes," I said. It was the only word I needed. "I didn't mean it," he said, his voice pleading. "It was just talk. You know how Mom is. I was just managing her. Managing her by lying about me? I asked, my voice still quiet. He was quiet for a long moment, and then he said it. The most honest thing he had ever said to me. The line that laid his soul bare, not as a monster, but as something far more common and far more tragic. A coward. You weren't supposed to hear it like that, he said. The confession was in the construction of the sentence. His regret wasn't about the betrayal itself, the lie he told, the disrespect he harbored. His regret was about the execution. My sin was not that I had been devalued, but that I had discovered it. The problem wasn't the sentiment, but the fact that it had been spoken aloud where I could hear it. I asked the question that had been sitting on my heart for 24 hours. Like what, Andre? The truth? He had no answer. There was a choked, sobbing sound on the other end of the line. He was crying. Not for our marriage, I knew. Not for the love we had lost. He was crying for himself. For the comfortable, easy life that had just been repossessed. The engine had been removed from his car, and he was finally realizing he had never learned how to walk. I'm sorry, Andre, I said, and I was. I was sorry for his weakness, sorry for the smallness that had cost him everything. But it's over. I ended the call. The first few weeks were a blur of paperwork and logistics. I hired a lawyer. I found a small sunlit office to lease in a building not far from my hotel. My broker, a sharp, no-nonsense woman named Cynthia, approved my listing transfers without a single question. She had seen this story before. Good for you, was all she said when I told her I was going solo. The business, my business, was born not out of ambition, but out of necessity. I had to build something of my own because I had finally understood the danger of building on someone else's land. I named it Danielle Williams Properties. Just my name. No group, no partners, just me. The clients came, not in a flood, but in a quiet, steady stream. It started with the Hendersons. Mr. Henderson called my new business line a month after the closing. Danielle, he said, my brother is looking to sell his place in West University. I told him he had to call you. You were the one who held that whole deal together. Another call came from a young couple I had helped find their first home 3 years prior. We're ready to upgrade, the wife said, and we want to work with you again. You were the only one who really listened to us. They hadn't even known I'd left Andre. They had simply looked for my name, because my name was the one they associated with trust and care. One by one, they found me. The people I had nurtured, the relationships I had maintained. They had always been my clients. They had just been living under his roof. It turned out that the personal touch, the meticulous attention to detail, the genuine care, the things Andre had dismissed as my soft skills, were the actual foundation of the entire business. He had been the brand, but I had been the product. And when the brand was all that was left, the customers quietly went elsewhere. About 6 months after I left, I saw him at an industry awards dinner. I almost didn't recognize him. He looked diminished. His suit wasn't as sharp. His smile didn't reach his eyes. He was working the room, but it was labored. The effortless charm was gone, exposed as the performance it had always been. Our eyes met across the crowded ballroom. He gave me a small pained nod and started to walk over. My heart didn't race. My palms didn't sweat. I felt a quiet, placid sense of distance, the way you might feel seeing a man you once worked with at a previous job. He was a part of my history, not my present. Danny, he said, stopping in front of my table, you look good. You too, Andre, I said politely. I hear you're doing well. The brokerage. I'm happy, I said. And it was the simple, unadorned truth. He looked down at his shoes, then back up at me, his eyes swimming with a desperate, unearned hope. "I really messed up," he said, his voice low. "I lost everything." I looked at this man I had once loved, this man I had given a decade of my life and my talent to, and I felt a final, clarifying release. The anger was gone. The hurt was gone. All that was left was a kind of sad, objective truth. I took a sip of my water, set the glass down gently, and gave him the last piece of insight I would ever offer him. "You didn't lose it, Andre," I corrected him, my voice soft but clear. "You gave it away." He had no response to that. He just nodded, a hollowed-out gesture, and walked away. I watched him disappear into the crowd, just another agent in a room full of them, his magic gone because the magician had finally walked off stage. There is a fundamental misunderstanding about what holds a life together. We think it's the grand gestures, the public declarations, the things that can be photographed and framed. We think it's the name on the door, the title on the business card. But it's not. A life, a marriage, a home. It's all held together by the unseen things, the constant, thankless, invisible labor of maintenance. The choice, made every single day, to show up and do the work. The quiet, load-bearing integrity that is either there or it is not. For years, I thought my job was to be the foundation. I thought that by being steady, by being strong, by holding everything up, I was expressing my love. I thought endurance was a virtue. But endurance without recognition is just erasure. A foundation that is never acknowledged is just a thing to be stood upon. Love is not meant to be infrastructure. It is meant to be a shared home, built by two architects working from the same blueprint. I didn't leave Andre because he insulted me. I left because he revealed the blueprint. In his world, I was a feature, not a founder. I was a helpful asset, not an essential partner. And once you see the real plans, you can never unsee them. You can't keep living in a house where you are not on the deed. The peace I have now is not the peace of victory or revenge. It is the quiet, solid peace of knowing my own value. It is the peace of honest work and earned success. It is the peace of a well-built structure, standing on its own. I learned that the most important property you will ever own is yourself, and the deed must be in your name alone. If you enjoyed this story, please like, comment, and share this video with your friends. Subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss a powerful story drop.